As we do have a crowd, though, I'd like to deviate a little bit and just give a little brief overview on kind of TIF, Tax Increment Financing 101, just a brief entree for those who may not be familiar with it. And I would also note that I put together an article, a full article on kind of Tax Increment Financing 101, and the residents will see that in the upcoming edition of the Current, which I think should be out in the next couple of weeks in the mailboxes. So I guess I just preview that, but I'll just go to that article and just read kind of the preface to that out loud. So Wisconsin cities, villages, and towns have limited tools available to them to advance economic development in their community. Other states allow local municipalities to utilize tax abatement, local sales tax, unique special district funding, and other enterprise zones. Each of these methods utilizes some diversion of tax dollars for supporting economic development activities or goals. In Wisconsin, the most common tool, and often the only one available at the city level of government, is tax increment financing, or TIF. Further on in the article, and the residents will see this, as I said, I wanted to really underscore the reliance on tax increment finance in Wisconsin municipalities. As of December 31 of last year, there were 1,238 tax increment districts in the state of Wisconsin. In Milwaukee County, there were 107 tax increment districts. And every city or village in the county, Milwaukee County, had a tax increment district with the exception of Bayside. So I just wanted to underscore the point that not only is this the only ball game or only tool or arrow in the quiver at the local level of government, it is very prevalent and very heavily used. The city of Oak Creek has successfully used tax increment financing over the many years since it was enabled in the late 1970s. Tax increment financing is enabled by state statutes, and the parameters and legislative scheme for which we have to operate are governed by state statutes. So there are parameters which the city has to maintain in its use of tax increment financing. If you don't work with TIF every day, I know the presentation earlier kind of gets to the nuts and bolts of our TIFs, and the council works with us every day, the staff works with us every day. If you don't work with it, it's very difficult to understand. It's an easy concept, but it's very difficult to understand if you don't work with it. So that lends to there being common misconceptions. Misconceptions such as cities and villages give away money to developers. Cities and villages abate taxes, and developers don't have to pay their fair share. As I mentioned, the state of Wisconsin does not allow us to abate taxes. Every single developer in every single tax increment district we've ever done gets a property tax bill and pays their property tax bill. It's where those tax dollars that they contribute based on their project go that is the kind of the underlying concept of tax increment. Tax increment, you establish a bounded area, an economic development area. Perfect example, we're sitting in it, Drexel Town Square. Develop an area, there's a certain value at a certain point in time called the base value, but for the establishment of a TIF district to spur additional development, it's unlikely, or not to the level that the city would accept, to get additional development. So with that increased value in the tax increment districts, you can do things like roadway improvements, you can do things like underground utilities, you can do things like incentivize developers to build a product or to close gaps in financial pro forma. So I wanted to just kind of sidebar a little bit to give that background. Otherwise, most folks probably haven't been exposed to this and would be, probably bored the next few minutes while I give our presentation. So our presentation here is something that you ask the city administrator to put together on an annual basis. I think due in part to some of those misconceptions that are in the community, but probably more so to the point that we want to make sure that we're extremely transparent with our use of tax increment districts, tax increment financing, and we want to demonstrate the condition that our tax increment districts are in each year. So we will do this annually. Values are certified as of August 15th every year by the Department of Revenue, so we'll give this presentation about the same time every year. Strategic action plan, always love to mention this. Economic development and our big economic development tool hits about every single one of those critical success factors that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. I won't go through them there. Staring at you every meeting, the back wall. So why do we do tax increment? Why do communities engage in economic development? Why do we try to grow businesses and grow population and grow tax base? As you see here, from 2013 to 2018, the city of Oak Creek has had a significant increase in its equalized value, or its tax base. Its base over which the tax burdens of the community are spread, so they don't fall exclusively on homeowners or or businesses. It's spread across the community. Obviously, this chart of equalized value relates directly to the city of Oak Creek having the lowest property tax mill rate in Milwaukee County. Try to put this graphic out there as often as possible to let residents understand that there is a significant value proposition with your tax dollars in the city of Oak Creek. One of the other misconceptions or points of clarification in this community and other communities, quite frankly, is in a growing community such as Oak Creek, debt is an essential component of maintaining and continuing to grow and meet the demands of that expanding growth. We've been criticized, quite frankly, for the level of debt that the community has taken on over the last several years with Drexel Town Square, with the Drexel interchange, with some of the public investments we've made in this building that you're in. And this is one of the slides that we talked about at the last meeting when we heard the audit, that I think if the public were aware of the facts of where our debt service, how our debt service is supported, the sources of funds for that, they'd probably be a little bit surprised by that. This graphic goes to show how, although we have grown our debt, the vast majority of our debt, 98% of our debt, is not supported by you and you and you and me as taxpayers in this community via the property tax levy. Only 2% of our debt that we've taken out is supported by general tax base of the city, our pocketbooks, folks in this room and your neighbors. So we have significant amounts of investment in the TIDs, and all of those TIDs, as you'll see here, are supporting those debts without relying on the general property taxpayers of the city. This is a very important slide to get out there. It shows the due diligence and quite frankly, the judiciousness in which the city council and the policymakers here in the city utilize tax increment financing. So one of the other common concerns is, it takes so long for these tax increment districts to close out, and the general property taxpayers don't realize the benefits, although they're not paying for anything in the districts. It takes so long to realize the benefits because statutorily, TIF tax increment districts can stay open for 20 up to 27 years for a certain type of district. We typically do 20-year districts. I believe we have one 27-year district right now at the Lakefront. And these are the 6 districts that the city has opened and closed in the community. It shows, again, each of them were able to be open for 20 years. We've closed those districts in as early as 6, and the most we've ever held open a tax increment district is 17. We have never went to or met the statutory life of these districts. Our goal, if possible, is to close those early so the benefits to the general taxpayers via the tax relief can come. Tax stabilization, I should say. And then you'll see the value generated by these 6 districts that have closed. With the values you see here and the other ones that we have open, the city has generated $313 million in property tax base within tax increment districts. That does not include 50, 75, maybe even up to another $100 million that are in the pipeline right now in active districts. And I'm going to switch focus a little bit in this presentation to the status of our active districts now. These are the districts that we have opened and closed. As this is the first annual presentation of the tax increment district, I'd like just to walk through these slides and show you the pieces of information that are one of those slides and show you the kinds of information that are on each of them, and then I'll kind of speed it up a little bit as we go on. So tax increment district number 6 is the Creekside Corporate Park, generally in the southwest portion of the community. It shows the creation date. It shows the expected termination date, or statutory termination date, I should say. It shows the type of district. There's several types of tax increment districts that the statutes provide for. And it shows the increment in that district, which is the value above where the district began, the value above the base, the incremental value. In this case, it's about 18 million. It shows the remaining developable acres, or it shows the initial developable acres, and then shows the council about how much more acreage we have available to develop in those districts. And then, one of the most important things, it shows the balance of the debt in that district, and in this case, there is 0 debt pending in TID 6. And there you see how the property values, you'll see these on each slide, where how the property values have undulated a little bit within the district. Usually the districts are a little more, straight line up, but obviously this one was opened at the beginning of the recession. So, and then it shows a little map of where it is for those who are a little more challenged like I am. So also in each of the slides, we will demonstrate to the council whether there are any active or pending development agreements in the district and what types of district those are, whether they're upfront or whether they're pay as you go, where we're reimbursing costs to somebody or some business. TID number 7 is the 27th Street corridor. Again, you see all of the data I had mentioned to you. There's about $2.225 million of debt remaining, but about 327 million developable acres. This one was also hit hard back in the middle stages of the recession. As you'll see, a very steady increase since 2013, and with development that we have in the pipeline, the Villa Healthcare Building, the HSI development, Lakeshore Animal Hospital, this district has really turned around. There are 2 active PAYGO development agreements in the district, and one of them is, for the Campione Company and as well as Liberty Trust. And if you want to add any color, Doug, at any time, just jump in. So TID 8 is the Oakview Business Park. Everybody is familiar with Oakview. See, again, we had a really slow start to Oakview Business Park, but I think you can see by the bar graph where that one's headed. It's a pretty good story. And this trend will really continue with the developments that have been approved or are in the pipeline to continue building that out. We only have one acting pay-as-you-go development for Stella and Chewy's, but we have kind of one more that hasn't quite commenced, if you will, for Arenas America that the council has approved. Number 10 is the Master Lock Tax Increment District. One active development agreement for Master Lock. It was a pretty nicely packaged tax increment district, if you will. And that was for the retention district to keep Master Lock in our community.
Just as a bit of history, you might recall that this was the former Midwest Airlines corporate campus that was then sold to Caterpillar, and Caterpillar then transferred over via sale to Master Lock. Again, just a great opportunity to keep a great local company and provide some value to those facilities. And I think that you'll see that, of that, the project costs are minimal, and this is one that I'm not sure what the payoff date is, but it's certainly going to close well ahead of schedule.
No outstanding geo debt in that district. Tax increment district number 11, one of the best success stories in the Midwest, if not the nation, is our Drexel Town Square, of course. We have this is the district we've invested most heavily in, as I think is pretty evident in the community. The balance of supported debt remaining is about $45 million. But on the flip side of that, you see the value that has generated within the last few short years to support that debt. And again, this is one of those where we have, I did the math, another $40 million, $50 million in development already under contract in Drexel Town Square to finish it out. Numerous active development agreements with all of the development partners we've had in Drexel Town Square, of course. So TID number 12 is the tax increment district around the IKEA. Only one development agreement and only one active PAYGO in the IKEA. There's about $5.1 million worth of debt, which the taxes from the IKEA are paying for. Any surplus taxes above and beyond the debt service on the infrastructure investment of the 5.1 goes to IKEA for a period of time until they're paid back. And 2018, obviously they were partially built. I would say that's about half of the value we can expect in the end from the IKEA. So you'll see that spike in 2019. To number 13 is the Lakefront, the largest district I'd hazard a guess at, unless 27th Street rivals it, but this is the Lakefront. Community will become well aware, if they're not already, of the Lake Vista Park. We have the grand opening on Thursday for that, and a beer garden there this weekend. There is really no active or pending development agreements in the district. This district was created just last year, and we're just about to the point where we're actively marketing the developable lands that are around the lakefront. The lakefront is a really great story of blight elimination and renewal. Obviously, a very not so rosy history environmentally with the large industries that were out on the lakefront since the turn of the 20th century on. And this is going to be a jewel for this community for many, many years to come. Number 14 is basically a singular development site that we created in early 2018. This again is an environmental remediation project, a contaminated site, heavily blighted both environmentally and visually as you drive by it. This is right across from the fire station at 6th and Rossett, if you're familiar with the property. And we're working with a developer to clean up that property and put a spec industrial building on the property. So there's one active PAYGO. That one will definitely close early. So TID 15. Drexel and 6th Street, if you've driven there lately, you'll see that the former metal storage buildings are in the process of being raised. There's a heap of concrete. This is directly across the street from the gateway, the Drexel Town Square gateway sign. Really another good opportunity to environmentally remediate and eliminate visual blight in this community and do something much better and something much more proud of than what was there. There is an Aldi facility going in, and then another outbuilding of about approximately 6,000 square feet. This is right now a very small tax increment district, and there's one active development for that remediation activity that I just spoke of. And then just some ideas for the future, positioning our future development. We'll be talking about the Ryan Business Park, and this is a strategic placement of this presentation because we are looking at creating our 16th tax increment district for the Ryan Business Park. I think that's next or a little bit further on the agenda. Obviously, the opportunities we talk about at the lakefront for private investment down there, and the Northwestern Mutual partnership with the city and Northwestern Mutual. Northwestern Mutual owns the majority of property that you see around the IKEA all the way out to 27th Street. And of course, they're just a fantastic development partner to have to bring top-notch development out there over the next few years to come. And then, future business and industry potentially around Elm Road adjacent to PPG, more of a distant opportunity, but something we're thinking about for the future.